Students have submitted typed responses to an FRQ, and they've done it through a Google form, and the Google form has been linked to a spreadsheet. And so this is the default format. Every column has, the first row of every column has the question, and then the rows below that have individual responses. And so I want to grade these quickly. I'm going to grade them in a time-efficient manner. And the first thing I'll do is I'll insert columns. And what this is going to do is it's going to put 2 columns to the right of every column. And the first column is going to say score. The second one is going to say feedback. And then at the end of the spreadsheet, there's going to be 3 columns added: overall feedback, percent evaluated, and points earned. The next thing I'll do is I'll color code these columns. This isn't necessary, but it just helps me navigate through the spreadsheet a little bit more easily. And then I'm just going to go down each question and I'm going to score the response. And for me, what works most efficiently is if I just mark the responses that are not going to earn a point, I'll mark them bold. And so I've gone through and I've graded the first question. And now I'm going to highlight the score column, and I'm going to select this script. And what it's going to do is it's going to look to the left, and if the cell is not bolded on the left, it'll enter a 1. If the cell is bolded, it'll enter a 0. Let's say the next question is worth 2 points. And so I go through and I bold the responses that are not going to earn any points, and I'll mark the responses that get some credit but not full credit by just manually entering that score in. And then again, I'll select the score column, but this time I want to specify the number that is placed into these blank cells. And so I want 2 to be entered. And it'll do the same thing as what I did over here for column C. It's just using the number 2. Notice that it does not override the value of cells that already had a number there. These columns are for feedback, right? So, I might say this is a common misconception. Let's talk after class or before class, or, schedule a time to talk with me. So this is a common misconception. Sometimes I will just paste an example of an ideal response. A lot of the times, though, I just leave feedback blank. What else? So another way that you can do this is you can go and just enter the zeros. And then if you select this script, it will fill blank cells in the column with 1. I guess you get to specify the value, but if you don't specify the value, then 1 is used. So in this case, you don't have to rely on any bold, non-bold formatting if you're not a fan of that. Okay, what else? So I'm just going to go through and randomly bold some responses, right? So let's say these are wrong. And you could save your scoring until the end if that's something you want to do. This really only applies if they're all worth a point, because, well, you'll see in a second what's going to happen. Okay, these are wrong, wrong. Okay, and those are all the questions. What I can do is I can go to evaluate the entire sheet. And so this is going to do what the first one did over here with column C. It's just going to do it across the board, right? So it's just going to sweep across the entire spreadsheet, and anywhere there's a bold, there will be a 0 entered. Anywhere there's a not bold, there will be a 1 entered. Okay, and once I've got all of the responses scored, I'm going to do my score statistics, and that will generate some information in these last 2 columns. So percent evaluated, that will just tell me how much of the response has been scored. This is not their grade. This is just telling me, have you scored all of those responses for that row? And I have. And then it'll tell me the total points earned. So there were 12 questions, but I think I made one of them worth 2. So the total number of points is 13 points. And in the overall feedback, I can type, each student is going to get their own individualized report. So I might type the same thing and have all students see it. So I might say, follow this link to access the scoring rubric. And then I would just insert a link. For example, I might just pull up the scoring guidelines for that particular question and then just insert it as a hyperlink. And if I want everyone to have that same overall feedback, that's what everyone gets, right? Or it can be individualized. And then I'm going to email out the reports. So I'm actually going to delete these because these are not real emails. But this one is, so you'll get to see what it looks like. I'm going to go to Custom Tools and Email Students. And I'm going to enter a subject. I'll say feedback for 2022 practice FRQ. And I can enter a personalized message, or I can just use the default message. I'll just use the default so you can see what the default message is. And then if I want to include any other URLs at the end of the introduction, I can do that. So maybe I want to have the 2022, maybe I want to have the questions here without the scoring rubric, right? So the rubric will be at the end where the overall feedback is, but the actual question, I'll link there. All right, and it sends the emails. And so I'm going to pause the video and we'll see what it looks like in just a sec. All right, so this is what they see. This is the default message, right? So it'll say hello, no matter what. And then this is the default message. It'll be different if you enter something into that second prompt. And then if you include a URL, it will be included right here. And then this is where they see their question and their response, right? So this right here is the question in, what is it, column B, and then their response is right here, the score they get, and then any feedback. So I didn't provide any individual feedback for any of these items, but if you provided feedback, it'll be right there. And then they can scroll down to the bottom. They get the overall feedback, and there's the scoring rubric that they can access, and their total points earned. So I will typically in the default, I typically don't use the default message. I'll typically just say this was out of 13 because it doesn't actually tell them, it doesn't convert it into a percentage. So I'll tell them what is the maximum number of points, and then I encourage them to just print this and save it as a PDF and load it into their Google folder to kind of create a database, a repository of feedback that they can always go back and use as a review or use as a study tool. But Yep, that's how I do it. And if you find this useful, feel free to use it. And if you have any suggestions or feedback for how I can make it better, please let me know. I guess the last thing is you can undo all this, like delete columns, and it'll ask you, are you sure you want to do this? But if I want to delete all my columns, it will remove the score, the feedback, and then the last 3 columns at the end, the overall feedback, the percent evaluated, and the points earned. And it basically just takes it back to how it looked before I started messing with everything. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and thanks. A few more things that I wanted to mention. So if you don't like the whole bold thing, that's fine. You can do like 0, 0, and you can run that bold script. And remember, at the end of the day, it's not going to override cells that already have a value in them. So you don't, it's the script is called bold, no bold, but if you just want to manually punch in the zeros, I mean, you can manually punch in the ones too. It's just for me, it's easier just to mark the zeros and then to sweep through the rows and give them credit when they earn credit. I like staying in the column. It just helps me kind of like get into a flow state. It helps with consistency, but so I want to move out of this column as little as possible. And so the easiest way for me to do it is just to mark with bold. But you don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. The other thing is, what if the student didn't respond? Well, it'll enter a 0. So it doesn't matter if this is bold, like see I'm bolding, I'm not bolding. It doesn't matter if it's bold or not. If there's nothing there, they're gonna get 0 points, right? So I'll show that again. Okay, so there's nothing there. Let me show this again. Let me bold it. Right, so now it's bolded. Before it was not bolded. I mean, it doesn't matter. If it's blank, they're not going to get anything. All right, so there you go. So, right, so no response is a 0. And then I guess the other thing is you can always run this. So the score statistic does not update in real time. But if you just want to run it again real quick, so let's say I've gone back and I've scored some, and now I want to generate a new, report. Just click it again, and it'll override those values and update them. So the very last thing I always do before sending my email is I run this score statistic, so that I'm sure that all of these are saying 100%, and I'm also making sure that this points earned is as up to date as possible before sending off these emails. Anyway, I'm sure there's something here that somebody's going to catch, so please let me know how I can make this better. But I wanted to just go ahead and share this because I've used it a handful of times, and it's made a huge difference in efficiency, in reducing the amount of time it takes to get feedback back to the students, and so enjoy.